I grew up in a single parent home, had a mother who worked, 2, 3 jobs to raise 2 sons. So when football found me, it was really, a life changing event. I tell people all the time, everything I know about being a man, I learned from football and football coaches. And because it was such a life changing event for me, I've always thought of football that way. That it's not just a game. It's a life changer and it's a lifesaver. And it is our job as coaches to make sure we're putting some tools in kids that are going to carry them the rest of their lives. You get that term 4 for 40. We have them for 4 years, but what we teach them is going to carry them for the next 40. You can go to any McDonald's and there's the old man amen corner with all the old guys in it. If you'll go up and just hang around the edge of that, it won't be very long before one of them's quoting one of their high school coaches. And if you think about it, you're talking about a 67-year-old guy quoting his high school coach. Well, that coach is long gone. He's not around anymore. But that man, that grown man, that grandfather, great grandfather, still remembers the lessons that were learned from those coaches, and they might not remember the play, but they remember the lessons. That I've never regretted being a coach. It's always going to be fun. It's always going to be exciting. It's always going to be adventure, and you're always going to make a difference. Football is a great game, but it's so much more. I say life isn't all about football, but football is all about life.
Welcome to the Quarterback Code Podcast, where we sit down with offensive coordinators, quarterback coaches, quarterbacks, and anyone who could add value as we decode the toughest position in all of sports. Today's guest is Joe Salas, a high school coach, air raid legend, and team building culture champion. For over 25 years, he's been putting up wild offensive numbers without ever coaching a D1 quarterback. In this episode, we go deep with Coach Salas on the 40 for 40 rule, what really matters in a quarterback besides the physical tools, his core principles that build better players and better men, and why football isn't just a game, it's the game. He also takes us inside of his system, of course, how he teaches pre-snap reads, what he teaches quarterbacks to look for post-snap, and how he develops quarterbacks as they move through their high school career with him. So let's dive in, the game, the mindset, and the kind of insight that'll make you a better coach straight from Coach Salas. This is the Quarterback Code.
But today's guest, you guys know him well. Man's had over 25 years of coaching experience. He specializes in turning programs around, turning cultures around. Over his 25 plus years, his teams have led the league in passing, gosh darn, almost every year from what I've seen. They've smashed school records, league records, state records for passing. Coach of the Year candidate multiple times. Have won conferences, regional championships. You've played for state championships. I could keep going. I want to welcome Coach Joe Salas to the program. How are you doing today, Coach?
I appreciate you having me on. I think what your introduction proves is that if you just keep hanging around, you'll eventually have a little success. It's definitely not because I'm smart. It's just I honestly believe if you'll just make the playoffs enough times, eventually you'll get just the perfect draw that'll take you pretty deep into the playoffs. So if I was going to title this talk on quarterbacks, I'd say it's this would be the system for the non-quarterback guru, because I am definitely I've had success with kids, but I'll go to a clinic and watch a guy talk, and I mean just be completely awed by what they're doing. And then someone asked me, and I say, "Yeah, we don't do any of that. We run an air raid system, and we do a few simple things, and we just keep doing them. We just got back from the FCA passing league camp last Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. I think there were two single A. We're single A. There were two single A schools there, and just a ton of 4A and 3A schools. I mean, they were state championship teams there, and we ended up we were the third highest scoring offense in camp out of about 15 teams, and and there's no good reason why we scored that many points except for we ran 4 plays the entire camp. And by the end of camp, we got pretty good at them because that's all we did. We just ran 4 plays over and over and over. and we got a pretty good kid that's going to be a pretty good gunslinger, but he's just got an attitude to him that builds confidence in the kids around him. Uh, so if you're looking for a guru expert, I'm not the one. But if you're looking for a guy that can convince everyone, hey, I can do that, then I'm the right guy to talk
Hey
to.
man, there's something that is missing with from when they get from high school to college, from college to the pros. The NFL is so hard, and college football is so hard. There's only a handful of quarterbacks at every level that every team would say, okay, that's one of the guys I would take. And it almost seems to me like everybody else is kind of in the same bucket. So you being able to get kids the opportunity and putting them in a position to put up yards and score points, gosh, if everyone could do what you've been able to do, they would call themselves a successful offensive coordinator. So what I'm trying to do is just kind of pick your brain so everyone can kind of just open it up and see, and maybe we can glean some soft skills of how to bring these quarterbacks through their life cycle and get the most out of them, because I think everybody pretty much has the same, you know, flood is flood wherever you are. They might have different progressions, but there's something that some coaches can unlock that others can't. So what you're talking about is exactly what we're after, coach. So I'm excited to dive into
Well,
this.
we've made a living with regular guys. So I've never coached a D1 quarterback. Never coached a one double A quarterback. They're all been just good high school quarterbacks, but it really is just a repetition game for us. So if you're looking for the magic bullet, it's just you know being super simple. But let's do it. I'm excited about
Yes,
talking
sir.
with you.
Yeah, and they're going to get flavor from coach like you, Coach Taylor, and we're gonna try to open up all your guys' brains so they can glean some stuff out of there. All
Well,
right, cool.
well, I would definitely do it. I would definitely do it like Coach Taylor says to do it. He's much smarter than I am.
His episode is great, but I'm excited because I think yours is going to be just as good. All right, coach. So before we get to the X's and O's, if you don't mind, I do think there's a pretty good correlation of the man that's the teacher being able to teach what he needs to, and the main points to get across to these quarterbacks. So if you don't mind, I'd like to kind of just take it back to your childhood and just get a flavor of kind of who you are and how you grew up. Uh, did you grow up in the South, or where did you grow up?
Born in Miami, uh, raised really in South Georgia. So I was in a good football. But actually, both people don't realize it, but Miami was a big football area. When I grew up there, the Dolphins and the Hurricanes, that's all there was. We didn't have all this other sports, so it was a football town. And that was before the Hurricanes, became the Hurricanes, but the Dolphins were already the Dolphins. And then when I moved to South Georgia, uh, I was in the Valdosta area, so high school football was king down there, still is. And but I grew up in a single parent home. I think this is the biggest coaching point is I grew up in a single parent home, had a mother who worked, 2, 3 jobs to raise 2 sons. And, so when football found me, it was really, a life changing event. When football found me, I tell people all the time, everything I know about being a man, I learned from football and football coaches. And because it was such a life changing event for me, I've always I've always thought of football that way. That it's not just a game. It's a life changer and it's a lifesaver, and and it is our job as coaches to make sure we're putting some tools in kids that are going to carry them the rest of their lives. You get that term 4 for 40. We have them for 4 years, but what we teach them is going to carry them for the next 40. And I always say you can go down to I know you're in California and they drink fancy coffee there, but you can go to any McDonald's and there's the old man amen corner with all the old guys in it. If you'll go up and just hang around the edge of that, it won't be very long before one of them's quoting one of their high school coaches. And if you think about it, you're talking about a 67-year-old guy quoting his high school coach. Well, that coach is long gone. He's not around anymore. But that man, that grown man, that grandfather, great grandfather, still remembers the lessons that were learned from those coaches, and they might not remember the play, but they remember the lessons, and that was in the old days when when culture wasn't a thing, and having an organized way of presenting culture and presenting lessons of life. Uh, they were. I don't know about you, but and I know this might be against the law in California, but my coaches were all good Christian guys, and they cared about kids, and they taught us lessons of life. But it wasn't. It was it just happened to be the sermon they were going to preach after practice that day. It wasn't organized, and it wasn't targeted the way that it is today. The way culture build, core principles. We didn't have all that stuff back then, but man, they impacted us. And I remember my junior year in high school. I was in a small high school, so all the football coaches, they coached all the sports. And my defensive coordinator was the tennis coach, and I played tennis in the spring. And I remembered, we were after a tennis match, and we were sitting in Wendy's, and that was the first time I ever told any of my coaches that I wanted to be a coach. And I remember he was a big old mean defensive coordinator, and he got teary eyed. He gave me a big old bear hug, and he told me it was the best decision I'd ever make. And he was right. He told me, it's always going to be fun. It's always going to be exciting. It's always going to be adventure, and you're always going to make a difference. And, that was 30 years ago, 35, 40 years ago, but he was right. That I've never regretted, uh, being a coach, and I always appreciated the job that those guys did as far as building me. They didn't know that I was, back then they didn't get to know you like they do, like we try to today. He didn't know I was fatherless. He didn't know that I was watching all, that whole coaching staff. I was watching them trying to decide what kind of man I was going to be when I grew up. And they didn't know. They didn't know I was watching, and they didn't know how much they were impacting me, and they didn't know how much they were going to impact my entire life. And as a result, my family, my kids, and thousands of other kids, are impacted because of what those guys did, the lives they led. That some little skinny punk kid was watching them when they didn't realize it, and trying to figure out what kind of man he wanted to be. So football is a great game, but it's so much more. I say life isn't all about football, but football is all about life. And I remember, this is probably the longest answer you've ever heard, but I remember my first year as a head coach. We got down to the end of the season, and it's time to graduate that first crew of seniors. And I remember it hit me like a ton of bricks, because it's so easy to get focused on W's and not focused on kids. I remember it hit me like a ton of bricks. I remember thinking, oh my God, what have I taught them? They're fixing to go out into the world. What did I teach them about being a man? And that self conversation kind of got me back on track as far as what was really important about being a high school coach. And I don't always do a good job of it, but I always try, and it's always important to me because of the impact those guys
Yeah.
had on me.
No, that's amazing, coach. And yeah, I mean, I think we all, if we're in football as adults, I don't think there's much doubt that at some point a coach, whether they knew it or not, probably impacted you at some point to want to pass that forward.
And the takeaway is they probably don't realize it. They don't realize that they were impacting you. They might have been talking to the stud D1 kid, but your little tail was right over there listening the whole time, and you were buying it, whether that D1 kid was or not. So they don't know they're impacting you.
Yeah, and that's the great thing about this the sport, and even in my old age, the community that I found as a coach, it continues. Coach, I'm going to take it back to you mentioned when you found football, it changed your life. What age was that when you started?
Uh, I don't know, probably sixth, seventh grade, somewhere in there. I mean, it was, yeah, it was, no, it was before middle school. It was rec ball, but it was, it found me. I didn't find it. It found me. And again, even in rec ball, just had good Christian guys, and they cared about kids. They they wanted to make an impact. They just didn't know exactly how, because culture wasn't, an organized culture just wasn't a thing at that time. But caring about kids was.
Coach, middle school and youth. Let's put that together. What kind of football player were you? What position were you? Were you starter? Were you role player? What was that like?
I was very below average, slow wide receiver with really good hands. so so you can imagine, even in my high school years, we were a Power I team in South Georgia. So you can imagine how I tell my kids, I've had kids catch more balls in one game than I caught in the whole season my senior year. So, but it's it was such a different
Absolutely.
game back then.
And that's funny. And so growing up, you had a brother. He's older or younger? Were you guys close, or what was that? What was that?
Younger brother, very very close. Uh, good guy. He lives in Atlanta. He's still in Georgia, and got a son and two grandchildren that he loves, and I've got two daughters that I love, and we did play rec ball together, and still talk about some of them
Nice,
stories
love it.
even today.
And okay, cool. And just last thing about that era of your life, what kind of student were you back in the middle schoolish age?
I was again very below average back then, and I tell our kids this today. That back then when I went to college, how old are you, Matt? Okay, so I'm 55. So when I went to college, you had to have an SAT score.
Yeah, we did too. Yeah.
They didn't care what it was. You
Oh,
just had to have one. So,
just complete the test.
so my wife will brag. She's real smart. She'll brag to me. Say, "Oh yeah, I got a 1200 on mine." I said, "I got a 1200. It was 600 and 600. I took it twice."
Exactly.
But
That's
I
so
I
funny.
was uh I was very average. I was real good in history, and I was real good in PE, and I was real good at lunch, and the rest of them I just got by. And I was talking to a friend the other day, and there's a strength. Coaches carry a certain confidence with them, and sometimes it's deserved confidence, sometimes it's not. And I always remember I was never, they were telling me, well, they were in the smart group, but they were kind of the bottom of the smart group, and how it impacted, their psyche. And I was like, I was not in the smart group, but I always thought that if I wanted to be in a smart group, I could have. I just didn't want to work that
Yeah,
hard. So
exactly.
it
I'm not.
never bothered. It never impacted my psyche at all. I was like, if I wanted to do that, I could.
Yeah, I'm with you, coach. I still think that way. That's funny. Man, so how about going into high school now? As far as education, was it about the same, or did you get inspired in high school, or was it about the same? Like,
I was always the kid who I wanted to be eligible to play sports, so I did good enough. I was a solid C, and I'd get my A in history and my A in PE, and I'd get C's in everything else.
yeah, that sounds familiar, coach. I'm right there with you. Okay, cool. And then
Yeah,
so,
and for your next question, and the trend continued in college.
well, I was gonna say football wise. So now we're in high school, and football wise, did that change anything, or did you jump into any more important positions, or like you're saying, it's a running era, and I grew up in that era. Trust me, we ran wing T, so receivers. We were lucky if we had one receiver on the field at a time. Uh,
Yeah, usually that's what we had. We had one a split out, and we had a tight end, and we had three in the backfield. And the three in the backfield, they were the good ones.
yeah,
so,
yeah. All right.
so I was real good at stock blocking, and I was good at the slant. But that was before, we didn't have air raid rules back then, where you sit it down in a
Oh
zone.
yeah, no.
So you just tear through a zone and catch it and get
You
murdered.
got one
And I was
window
good
to
at
hit
that.
me.
I'd hold on to it, so they'd throw me another one every now and then.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. Well, great. And
And I was a three-sport letterman, but I had three weird sports. I was football, wrestling, and tennis. So usually when someone says, "Yeah, I was a three-sport letterman," they were a stud. But I was. Those were the three sports that a very below average athlete could excel in. Those three sports. So
oh,
those are the ones I
I
picked.
I don't I don't know about those other two sports, there's not too many sports that are harder on cardio. Wrestling is absolutely one of the toughest 3 minutes in history. That seems like an eternity when they're clicking that thing down and you're getting tired. I can.
Oh yeah, I think wrestling is the toughest individual sport there is. I'm a jujitsu guy, so I still
Oh,
love to
you
get
do.
out there. Matter of fact, I was at jujitsu last night, and when I walked in the door, one of the purple belts came up and said, "Hey, be careful! That guy over there with the
Yeah.
ears, he was a Division I wrestler. You better stay away from him." And so, of course, I got paired up with him the
Oh, of
whole
course.
night. So I'm wrestling a 25-year-old Division I wrestler all night. So I was a little tired by the time I left.
Stay away from the cauliflower ears. Those guys have been through it.
Oh yeah, when you see them ears, you gotta run.
Yeah, I do boxing, but I don't know. You got to find something that's fun to exercise nowadays. That's I can't just go to the gym and run on the treadmill anymore. I just won't do it. Okay, cool. And so you're in high school. You're a receiver on a running team. You're like probably the culture champion right now in our world of coaches, right? You, Randy Jackson, culture champions. Everyone knows that's like your brand. Did any I know that we didn't back then, they didn't call it that, and they didn't have programs like you've already stated, but did you have any, like, from your view, maybe you can kinda see, you know, the way that the team aura is, was there any part of you that was like, "Oh, maybe I could help with the culture," or maybe if I'm a good teammate, like that type of thing, or were you contributing other things?
No, I was just a young dumb kid, but what we had Coach Max Milligan was an elite Christian, just a guy who cared. He loved his players, and his players loved him. And that was a big transition going to college because that wasn't the case. But he loved his players, he cared about his players, and his players loved him. So there were a type of culture got built there, and he was an FCA guy, so he was probably building culture through FCA. But that's the main thing I remembered was he loved his kids, and his kids loved him. I mean, we loved them, and so that built a certain type of culture, even though it wasn't called culture then, and that put in me this idea of how important that was, how important it was. Our mission is to teach boys how to be men and build winners for life, and even though he didn't have something called a mission statement and he didn't phrase it that way, but that's what he was doing. He was teaching boys how to be men, and he was building winners for life, and he was putting some tools in us that we still use today. And that concept of 4 for 40, he was a role model for that before it got organized and packaged, so that we could hit. The only difference between what those kind of coaches were doing 30 years ago and what we're doing today is we have a system for doing it, so that we're making sure we're hitting it every day, kind of like a lesson plan. And he didn't have a lesson plan, but man, he would talk to us out. He would number one, you could feel the love of him and for him, and he would have a little sermon either before or after practice. And I'm saying a sermon, it wasn't always religious, but it was he wanted to talk to us like we do, and we still do it today. The kids are tired, they're not listening, and you stand up there and you start preaching. And uh but there's a certain amount of kids that they are listening, and it is impacting them. And I was that kid. I was not a stud athlete, but I listened, and it impacted me, and it changed my
Right.
life.
And so as you're leaving high school on your way, we'll get to college here and do a quick college, but you're on your way. You feel like you've had a good experience with high school football. It sounds like you've already decided before you leave high school that you are going to be a coach in some way, shape, or form, a football coach specifically.
Yep, I wanted to be a small high school football coach in South Georgia.
And so where did you end up going to college?
Valdosta State.
Oh, that's right. That's right. You and Shane both went there. That's right. And you went to Valdosta State. Did you attempt to get on the football team, or were you there as a
I walked on and was a scout team All American for a few years, and
love
and
it, love it.
that was back that was back when we were in the old Gulf South Conference, which is a very prestigious Division II conference. and like of the 7 teams in the conference, 5 of them ran the wishbone. So of course, guess who got to be the running backs in the wishbone? So
Nice.
we had I don't. This name doesn't mean as much as it used to, but we had Jesse Tuggle.
Oh
We had
yeah.
some NFL guys on that defense, and they would just brutalize us, just beat us to death. And that lasted a few years until I couldn't take it anymore. And
You weren't the point. You weren't the point of the wishbone, were you?
no, I was one of them halfbacks.
Okay, I
And,
was gonna say, man, every job is fine except that guy.
of course, they were running the pitch right now, so I didn't always catch the pitch. I was laid out before the pitch ever
Oh,
got to me.
they knew what
But,
was coming.
it
They
was
knew.
tough sledding there, simulating that, and then we were all receivers, and we would talk after practice and be like, yeah, we could go to Jacksonville State. We'd fit right into their program because, or Troy State, we'd fit right in because we were running the same offense for 5-6 weeks in a row.
Totally.
And that's the funny thing. And so I came out of there thinking I was going to be an option guy because I spent so long simulating triple option and flex bone. And then, of course, when Hal Mummy came in, he immediately corrupted me into thinking that you needed to throw the ball every down.
Yeah. Well, that's an interesting transition. And so you played for a few years. What did you say? 3 or 4? Did you?
2 years. Scouting. I don't know if you can say I played. I practiced for 2 years.
You're on the team. I mean, that's still on the team. You might not have traveled at every game, but you're still on the team.
Didn't travel any games.
Yeah. Okay. Well, still on the team. I definitely.
I practiced a lot.
Uh, and so after those 2 years, you said, okay, that's enough of running the wishbone at a pretty darn good defense. What were you going to school for? Did you have your degree picked by that time, or?
I was secondary ed social studies. I started out as a social studies teacher.
So you kind of knew you were going to teach. Like that was your path from the beginning. You were going to teach and coach, and
Yeah,
and that was.
I decided my junior year I was going to be a high school football coach, and of course I took the long route. After did took more than 4 years to graduate college, but that I knew that's what I wanted to do.
And so you graduate college, and what's your first coaching job? High school, or do you get a GA or
I
something?
GA'd for Howell, and then and I went straight from I was a GA at Valdosta State, and went straight. My first year teaching, I was first year teacher, first year head coach, first year AD.
Holy cow!
So so you can imagine, I did not win Teacher of the Year that first year. And I was swimming as hard as I could, but
Oh my
I was
gosh!
at a place called Dooley County, which is a talent-rich environment, and so even a dumb guy who didn't know what he was doing, we had. It took me about 3 years to get it figured out, and then we turned them into a strong playoff team. And back then, now we were running air raid when air raid wasn't cool. Now we were one of the few teams in the state. People thought we were crazy when we were lining up a shotgun and throwing it everywhere. But it was a very talent rich environment. Lot of speed, a lot of great kids, a lot of size. So we were able to be pretty successful.
Love it. And so I could probably spend an hour just going through your coaching journey. But have you always been an offensive coordinator and head coach?
Head coach, OC, the majority of my career. I did have some time when I transitioned to North Carolina. I married a North Carolina girl, so I went from South Georgia football to North Carolina football. There was a time, about a 2 year period, where I was the defensive coordinator because I had Shane with me. So I moved over to defense and ran the defense, and that was probably my biggest growth period was having to flip over and run defense. Uh, Defense is much harder to coach than offense is, and much harder to prepare for. So it was a super growth period. But as soon as I could get off of defense, I went back to offense because it's a lot more fun. 5 years in Georgia, and then the last 25 in North Carolina.
And for the
And
most part, offensive side, but except for a stint.
almost always offensive coordinator and head coach, and I've always run the special teams.
Well, that's interesting about special teams, but let me ask you about the defense in particular, because I continue to hear from very high level offensive coordinators that I've talked to, you know, that they did spend at least a couple seasons on the defensive side of the ball, whether it was on purpose or they just got put there and they just made best of the situation. But to a man, it's like they've all said it was invaluable for their offensive play calling. Um,
I don't know how much it impacted my play calling, but it was like going to graduate school as a coach. I start when I was at Valdosta State. I was on defense. I was a defensive backs coach, so I had that. That's where I made my bones was on as a DB coach. And then, but when I had to when I had to move to defense, it just I mean it's just a different world. You can get away with think about it. You're on offense, you only got to be right one out of three, one out of four times. On defense, you got to be right every time, and you got to be prepared every time. Offensively, we've all seen where they're calling it out of their butt. I mean, they're just out there playing Xbox. Defense, you have to be prepared, and you got to understand. You have to understand how the puzzle fits together, and you got to teach your kids how the puzzle fits together. And I think the best defensive coordinators, they can teach how it all fits together, and they can prepare for what you're doing and try to take away your best things. And it's just much more difficult. You gotta, there's a reason why, Saban has a defensive background and Kirby Smart has a defensive background. There's a reason, because it forces you to be a big boy coach, because you cannot half step on defense.
Absolutely. No, that makes perfect sense. Okay, cool. And so you knew, it sounds like you knew pretty much early on that you liked the offensive side of the ball a little bit better and you enjoyed that piece of it more. So that's kind of why you went that route with the majority of your career. Um, so that's great. So we're talking 30 years of, did I get it wrong? 25 plus 30 years of coaching, the majority on offense, the majority of the time you're the OC that has to do with directly working with these quarterbacks. And so here's the meat and potatoes of this conversation is this. And maybe we could start with this one. So now you've gone through the process in 30 years, 25 seasons of quarterbacks where you've gone through the process, and maybe I don't know if you can quantify it or not, but taking a freshmen that you just obviously you're not coaching them day to day, but they're in the program. You kind of know who's coming up the pipeline, but I'm sure you're engaging with them in some way early. And then now you've kind of taken a kid as a freshman, gotten to know him, and taken him through the whole process, and now he's graduating out into the world. What I'd like to know is if you now, after all this time, and maybe you did it early on, and let me know if you have, did you put together, just like in the same programmatic way you did culture, have you put together a systematic way to kind of groom quarterbacks from the time they step on your campus all the way through, like the process of getting them ready for the plays and progression? And we'll get to those specific things, but I just mean like overall getting them ready to kind of come through, and so they are pacing properly, big picture wise, as they move through your program.
This is going to be this answer is going to be very anticlimactic. It is, I used to do a lot more of it when I was younger, where we really tried to focus on off-season quarterback schools and really had a progression that we were taking them through. Don't do it hardly at all anymore. Uh, the big reason is because all this every I've never coached any other kind of offense except for the air raid offense, and the air raid offense is so repetition based and so progression based that you just I we don't need to. uh and I know there's people fainting right now, but we don't we spend very little time in the off season with our kids now. Very little structured time in the off season with our kids, uh, because there's just a few boxes to check, and then the system takes care of the rest. And the first box to check is pick you one who can throw the football. It's not rocket science. You gotta have one that has a natural ability to throw the football. You can polish them up, but I'm not in the habit of taking a project on. I've got guys. Shane probably be one that says you take the best athlete that can throw it and you make him your quarterback. I haven't even done that. We've done. We take the ones who think they're quarterbacks, and by going through the process, they kind of natural select into which one's actually going to be our quarterback. And sometime like last 2 years, he was a straight like Mike Leach air raid quarterback, tall kid, couldn't run a lick. Before him, we had an athlete. We've probably had a string of athletes before him. We're back this time now that the kid that I just talked about graduated, so now we're back. We've got a more athletic kid at quarterback again, who's a great leader and he's a baseball player, really dropping dimes on people. So we've used different kinds of bodies, but there's just a couple things that you need to do to check the boxes, and then plug them into the system and let the system do the work, because the system is all about progression and repetition. We really only use, like I said, I went to a clinic in the wintertime, and I mean, the guy teaching, he's a friend of mine. I mean, he was, just impressive with the amount of drill work he was doing in the off season. And, they guys in the room knew who I was. So afterwards they're asking, which one of them? And I said, we don't do any of that. We don't do that stuff. We are an air raid team, and we put them in a system, and we let them go, and we give them a couple parameters, and then we go. And and of course they thought I was holding back on them, but
Yeah.
I wasn't. We don't do all that stuff that this quarterback guru was doing. And of course, we're throwing for probably 1,500 more yards a year than he is with a lesser athlete. So
that's
it's not as fancy as everyone makes it out to be. And Shane, have you had Shane on this thing yet?
Yeah.
Now Shane puts me to he puts me to shame now. I mean, he has a good quarterback school off season stuff, and he'll give me the PowerPoints, and I mean, it looks so impressive. And I'm not really doing any of that stuff Shane's doing. We pick one who can throw it, and we give him a couple little drills, and we get the progression read. See, Shane doesn't run straight air raid anymore. He kind of got a hybrid deal going there, and it just the true air raid progression stuff. It's just magic in a bottle.
Yeah. So let's drill down on the QB attributes, and it sounds like your answer is going to be different than Shane's and others that I've talked to, and I love this. So when you get a quarterback, let's just say, I don't know if this has ever happened, but I know usually in high school you usually have an heir apparent kind of picked. But if you're starting, let's just say next year you have 3 sophomores coming in that have never played a lick. What are the key attributes that you're looking for?
Mechanically, can you throw the football? I can't. I'm not a quarterback guru. I cannot fix him mechanically. I can polish it up a little bit. I can give him a few tips and pointers. But if he's got a broken mechanic, I can't fix it. So
yeah, we don't deal with that.
Mechanically throw the football.
And what else?
And then what kind of attitude and demeanor and leadership does the kid have? None of us want to get, here's one thing we'll all agree on. When it comes nut cutting time, I want a nut cutter. I want a dude that is competitive as crap, who wants the ball in his hands at the end of the game, who been dreaming about being Tom Brady his entire life, and is not going to piss his pants when the heat's on. And that's the guy I want. I want that guy at quarterback. So if all 3 of those kids that you just said, I got 3 sophomores, they're all 3 mechanically sound. Then I want the one that is the most competitive, that can keep his head when the fire's on, and that is a winner, that wants to compete, wants to battle, and wants to win, and wants the friggin' ball in his hands. And not everyone's like that. We as men, we all say we want that, but not everyone wants that. I want the guy that wants the game, and this is me. And the quarterback is gonna mirror the coach's mentality. But all I want is the ball in our hands with a chance to win at the end of the game. You know, we end of last year, we ended up having a good defense. I think we're going to have a good defense this year. So you don't get as many of those last minute situations. But if you're defensive coordinator for me, if you give me the ball and all I got to do is go score and we're going to win, you did your job. I don't care if it's 70. I don't care if it's 14. I don't care. If you give me the ball and all we got to do is drive the field to score and win, the defense did their job. So I want a quarterback that mirrors that mentality. Give me the dang ball. All we got to do is drive the field to win. Let's go win. And you know, we just get, of course, it's 7-on-7. Sometimes we talk like 7-on-7 is real, and it's not. But you know, we were just at the 7-on-7 camp. We're playing. You know, we're one of. I think there's only 2 single A schools there. All the rest are 4A and 3A. You know, big schools. They got more kids in their senior class than we got in our school. And the amount of games that we won on the last play of the game was just unbelievable. I think we won three games on the last play of the game, and I think we tied 2 other ones on the last play of the game because we have this mentality. That's all we want. If you give us the ball at the end with a chance to win, let's go win.
Yeah.
That's what and a quarterback, that's what I want. I want a mechanically sound, that's a freaking competitor and a fighter and wants the ball in his hands at the end of the game. If you find that, hell, everything else is pretty easy after that.
Any litmus tests you've been able to figure out before they've stepped field on a tackle football field to figure that skill set out?
No, I think it's even this kid. We got an upcoming junior. He was our JV quarterback last year, and I mean, there's just something. And I think we all see this. I don't know if you see it in middle school from 7th to 8th, but there's just something about high school where a kid just knows when it's his turn, and they flip the dang switch. And it's not all. I'm not always talking about at quarterback. I'm talking about at every position on the field where he wasn't that good the year before, but he knows it's his shot. You know, this is his time, and man, they just flip the switch, and that's what. Typically, that's what happens with our quarterbacks. Is they know their time's coming, and whether it's their senior year, their junior year, or their sophomore year, all of a sudden you get this gigantic jump, and it could be confidence, it could be just the number of reps. You know that the varsity kid's going to get a lot more reps than the JV kid and the number 2 kid, and but that's happened with this kid. You know, where he was a good, solid JV quarterback. He is just showing every sign that he's going to be a world beater as a varsity quarterback. And I mean, just accuracy and just the killer instinct attitude is what he brings.
Love it. And that's my number 1 attribute for dang near anything that has to do with competition, for sure. So before we move off of this and move on to the progressions piece into a little bit more technical conversation, I did want to ask you I know you don't do like a big offseason program with the younger guys and the older guys, but are there little ways you incorporate freshmen and JV quarterbacks? Like, do you have them come to some of your quarterback meetings just to like get a flavor for it? Or is it like, you know, you'll see them, you'll say hi, but you don't really need to do it much until they get to you as varsity? Or
Well, now we coach them all. So I'm coaching JV quarterbacks, and at bigger schools when we have a freshman team and a JV team, we coach them all. We coach all our kids.
In the off season, or
so
what do you mean?
No, I'm talking about in season. Is that what you're talking about? Off season stuff?
I'm just talking about in general. Like, how do you get to know sophomores and freshmen?
In season, we bring them all. So when our big thing, and I got this from Shane, is Monday night we go through the game play by play. And poor JV kid, he's watching some other kid, but he sits there and he watches it with us. Even though I'm talking to the varsity kid, the JV kid is watching and learning as we go play by play through the whole entire game.
And you're talking. I'm sorry, just to clarify, this is in the quarterback room, not like a team review of the film.
Now we'll the team will watch, but we drill that down to 10, 15 plays tops.
Got it.
So the team is not seeing every play of the game. The quarterback, after all that, The quarterback has to go through every single snap of the
Love
game.
it. Love it.
And that poor JV quarterback has to sit there and go through it with us, even though he's not watching
No,
himself.
it's
And
perfect.
there's a certain discipline. They're probably trying to stay awake as they're doing it, but they've got to hear. I'm hardly even addressing them. They're just simply watching it, but they got to hear me coaching the varsity kid, and and that's why I think when it's their turn, they get this gigantic leap, and because they have sat through that, for an entire season or 2 seasons sometimes, listening to the varsity kid getting
I
coached.
love that. And that provides
So that and
context.
that's that, and the years, and Shane told me to do that for years, and the years that I have done it, quarterback play has been out the gate, and the years that I'm lazy and don't do it, quarterback play suffers. So that is a Shane Dular trick of taking them play by play through the game, and it is a difference maker.
No, I love that. And that, I just feel like, yeah, for them to just absorb it through osmosis for 2 years. I mean, there can't be any better platform to just prepare yourself mentally and it's all mental. So great. I
And
love to
they're
hear
and
that.
they're the drill work. They're throwing, because they're all together. They're getting the same exact drill work that the varsity kids getting. So I think the repetition of that makes a difference also.
Yep. Okay, cool. So let's go back to our analogy. Now you've paired those three new quarterbacks down to two. And so how are you teaching the progressions and the reads for each of these plays? Is it strictly, reps in practice, or are you on the chalkboard? Are you using little things on their desks? Or what are you doing to teach progressions?
Uh, we're chalkboard, and that is the only off season thing we will do is we'll take them play by play in off season on the chalkboard. I used to do a lot of checkers work. I don't even do that anymore. We'll just draw it up, and then the litmus test is then they have to draw it up, and they never draw it as pretty as I do, but they get it. They get the concept. But the progression work, and that I think that's what separates air raid from everyone else. Everyone else wants to read a defensive guy, and air raid just goes through progression. So having the kids memorize those progressions, I mean, is everything. So when we say seven, slot seven, they got to say slant, slant, shoot, and they got to say it over and over and over every time we say it. I mean, it's getting that. I guess it's getting the brain memory of they got to understand the progression, and once they get that, then we can polish up everything else. But every shoot a stick. I don't know how West Coast teaches it, but ours is, well, we changed ours because of Longo, but ours used to be stick to shoot, stick to shoot, stick to shoot. So we got pre-snap, stick to shoot. Well, now we got pre-snap, and we've gone to the Longo style, which has made a huge difference, where we're reading between them. So we're reading the stick and the shoot at the same time. Me and you talked about it. I used to be a swing guy, and Longo convinced me, because and here's how he convinced me. This will convince you. You ready? He said, I'm a swing guy too, but we found out that the shoot route does get it out there quicker, and it allows you to read them both at the same time. So even though I prefer swing, we run the shoot, and this is the results we've had from it. So I bought it. I was like, well, I'm a swing guy, but okay, if it's better, I'm going to do it that way. And then the way he reads it by looking between them, and our quarterback picked up on it immediately, uh, is really like almost revolutionized our stick route package now. So now it would be pre-snap to stick. Now we're reading stick and shoot at the same time. Uh, so those progressions, getting them to understand that in their brain. And I mean, it's so easy now. I guess that's why we've kind of gone away from off-season stuff. Is we're in our today's Tuesday, so we have been practicing for 7 days in the summer. We started last week with camp. No, we did one 7-on-7 before that. So we did a 7-on-7 before camp. We did camp. We did a 7-on-7 after camp, and we practiced Thursday and all this week. Our kids have had thousands of reps, in 7-on-7 settings. So I mean, he's got it. He's already got it, and especially because we only ran 4 plays at camp. The most important, our stick, our slant shoot concept, and our vertical concepts are 3 of the 4 that we ran. He's had thousands of reps of that already. So why am I gonna and see, we're a small school, so I mean my kid plays basketball, baseball, football. So when am I gonna take him? When am I gonna do that? I'm trying to fit in our senior meetings for leadership meetings. When am I gonna have time to have that kid, because he was tired. By the end of the year, he's tired. So getting rid of the off season stuff made a difference, and I just between spring ball and then a million 7-on-7s, he's getting the reps. And once he gets the progression of every play has a progression, then the rest is just
Right.
gravy.
And so, just on the last note about the progression piece, teaching the progressions, your thoughts on how to keep QB2, and maybe I don't know if you guys always have a backup that is only a quarterback, or if he's an athlete that can come in and just spell people. But I'm curious. I got in a situation this year where my backup quarterback, he actually came in and did great, but I failed. I could not spend enough time with whoever the backup was to ramp him and get him ready as much as I wanted to. How are you getting QB2?
Our backup is our JV quarterback. So in North Carolina rules, he gets to play on Thursday and then dress on Friday. And as long as we got a certain amount of quarters he's allowed to burn during the year. So it's 8 quarters for the whole season. So as long as and one play equals a quarter. So as long as he doesn't, unless I put him in on purpose, unless someone gets hurt or I put him in on purpose, he's not burning quarters. So he can dress every Friday. If he doesn't go in, it didn't count against him. So our JV quarterback is our backup quarterback, and he's there dressed, ready to go. And we're hoping he never has to go in, but he's getting a full game on Thursday, and then he's there on Friday prepared, as the backup. So I don't know how, every state's rules are a little different on how that works. But in North Carolina, that's one good thing we have is our JV quarterback is our backup quarterback. So he's getting all the reps of drill work. Then he's not getting as many, like he'll get like the first 5 reps of 7-on-7 in practice, and then he'll have a JV team period where he gets reps.
The JV game, we're running the same offense. Okay, good. So that's the easy answer for that one. Okay, good. Yeah, we don't. I've never heard that before, but that's awesome. Honestly, that's really cool. Okay.
In Georgia, Georgia might be different now, but back in the day when I was in Georgia, the same thing. All the JV could dress on Friday. I think they've gone more to an 8-quarter rule now. It's been 30 years since I've been in Georgia, but when I was in Georgia, it was the same thing. The JV quarterback was the backup varsity
Absolutely.
quarterback.
Okay, interesting. And so how do you quantify if a quarterback is actually understanding and executing on the progressions? Is it just look and feel, or is there any way that you've been able to quantify over the years, like, okay, I for sure know they understand the progressions on stick, and I for sure know they understand the progressions on mesh? Any
That's the beauty. That's the beauty of air raid, is that you can say, Matt, what's the progression on 92? And he's got to be able to say corner, swing, mesh, or he's got to be able to say corner, swing, mesh, mesh, back. He's got to verbally be able to say it. And which I don't do a lot anymore, but when Shane was with us, because Shane's such a detailed guy, Shane would have him go through the progression and look at each progression as he went through the play. So we could take the quarterbacks and run, and where they'd have to say it out loud: corner, swing, mesh, mesh, back. Where they'd have to turn their body each time and look where that progression was going to be. Now I don't do that part anymore, but just pop quizzing a kid and say, what's the progression on stick? What's the progression on 7 or 9? What's the progression on 92? What's the progression on 95? And they verbally have to tell you the progression. So, I mean, there's no hiding there, is there? That's like pop quiz in science class. There's no hiding. You either know the progression or you don't, and a few reminder push-ups, and again, and that's where you get, and I just said that, you don't have to do that with quarterbacks. Quarterbacks want to be the guy. There's one quarterback, and believe me, we have this talk. You know, there's only one quarterback. There's a bunch of receivers. There's a bunch of linemen. There's a bunch of DBs, but there's one quarterback. So if you're wanting to be the quarterback, you better want to be the friggin' man. And if you want to be the friggin' man, you gotta know this offense like the back of your hand. You gotta know it like I know it. You gotta know where not only what you're supposed to do, but you gotta get people lined up. And you got to be able to turn to somebody and tell them when they look at you crazy, you got to be able to tell them what they're supposed to run. That's your job as the quarterback. And if you can't do that, then you're not the one, because we're only looking for the one at quarterback. And that's so. There's almost never a time where I got to punish a kid for not knowing progression, because they're just not going to be the one. If they can't learn the progression, if they can't learn the formations, if they can't tell kids where to go, what to do, and here's another one, and that JV quarterback, because we're a small school and we two platoon. Heck, there was times my kid who graduated last year, his sophomore year, there was times when he was lined up at H because someone got hurt. So we looked and said, "All right, go to H," and he would get in there, and he would know the play because he was the quarterback. He was the JV quarterback, so he knew what those guys had to do. And there were plenty of games. There were multiple games where he had to go in for a play. He might have burned three quarters, but he was playing H, or he was playing Y, or he had to play X for a couple plays because no one was knocked out of there. So those guys got to know the offense. And if you're the one, well, then that's just what you do, because you're the one. But I don't think there's any more quantifiable way that the air raid is a magic offense because of that. Because you look at them and say, 9, what's the progression? And they got to say slant, slant, shoot.
Right.
If they don't say it, then they don't know it.
So let me ask you this. Has anyone ever, and tricking is the wrong word, but I don't have a better vocabulary. Has anyone ever fooled you into being able to know the progressions through camp and have all the right answers through camp, or just in general, and then they get into live bullets and they just can't? They just can't. It's just too much for them, or there's too much going on. They can't process. You can process outside of, the chaos, but in the chaos you can't process.
Yeah, I've had a couple who floundered in 7-on-7. Like, I thought they were going to be the guy, but they couldn't get through 7-on-7 in the summer because it's, especially when we're going fast. Like, no, we're going slow right now because we're missing a few kids, but normally in 7-on-7 we're going fast. We're going fast like we do in the game, and it is a competition. So I've had some guys kind of burn out in 7-on-7 before, where they just couldn't handle the pressure. They couldn't pull the trigger. But I've never gotten them all the way to the season and then found out.
Interesting. Good. No, and that's a good way to gauge it, right? And go up tempo in 7-on-7.
Yeah, I mean, I know we pretend it's not. We know it's not real, but there's a lot of real elements to it, or else we wouldn't be doing it. We know we're getting benefits from 7-on-7, or we wouldn't spend all summer doing it. So, I know there's a bunch of pretty boys that think it's real football, and we know it's not. But we know there's a lot of good stuff in it, and that's one of them.
If you're running your true plays on offense and defense, then fine. Like, have at it, right? It's these crazy 5 bender routes that are just like killing the football universe right now. Like, come on, it's not real.
Well, I was impressed. We had at that camp there were 2 teams that were under center. One was a flex bone team, and one was a split back veer team. And they took every snap under
Good.
center, and they ran real plays, and But of course, the team that won the whole thing, they were playing 2-man passing league defense the whole time.
But
So
yeah, they probably suck at
you
real
get both
football.
varieties.
They're
Yeah.
probably not good in tackle season.
With no Mike Backer. They're playing 2-man with pressed in your face, 2 safeties over the top, no Mike Backer. But they were wanting to win a trophy, and they weren't caring as much about getting ready for real football.
Well, cool, Coach. I love our progression talk. I think that's a realistic way to do it. And like you said, there's a lot of things that coaches can take away from that. Now, let me talk to you about pre-snap. We talked. You mentioned it a few times. Are there 2 to 5, however many, do you have pre-snap variables? I call them variables, but I don't know what you might call them, but pre-snap keys that you want your kid to answer in their mind before every play?
Yes, but they're super simple. Ours is all our progression. I want our kids when they're having to work through their progression, it's all yes no answers. Is he open? Yes or no. If it's no, go to the next one. It's that simple. If yes, throw it to him. So it's always yes no answers, and we're the same with pre-snap gift stuff. You know, when you look at your pre-snap, is it a gift? Yes, throw it. Throw it right now. If it's no, don't look at it again. Now we're on to concept. That's and once you pre-snap is pre-snap. So if you don't go back, you don't go back on a pre-snap, but it's just a yes no. Is that what has Longo said? Is that $1,000 throw? If it's $1,000 throw where you'd be willing to bet $1,000 on it, then throw it. If it's not $1,000 throw, then all right, that's over. That's the previews of the coming attractions. We're about to watch the real movie now. So but keeping it that simple, it's all yes no. Same thing with when you're RPO stuff or you're reading your zone read kind of stuff. It's all yes no answers. So just keep it that simple and keep moving.
So you're not asking your quarterback to tell you how many safeties are on the field, if the middle of the field is open or closed, cornerback depth. Those things aren't. You're not.
We used to, and Hal used to be big on open close and all that, but we haven't done that in a long time. Mainly because we run enough tempo that they're going to declare pretty early. Are they a two safety team or one safety team? Now, when I'm back there with the quarterback in 7-on-7, we talk about that a lot. We talk about uh, especially like on mesh and on snag stuff. Where I'll ask them, could you tell that was going to be there pre-snap? And they'll say, yeah. You'll get a picture in your mind. I know you can do it too. You're standing back there behind your quarterback, and you got a mesh called. Well, if before the ball snap if the corner's going to be there or not. So I'm just wanting them to see what I'm seeing, and I just ask them, could you tell? Could you tell that that was a gimme? Or sometimes I'll say it. We'll have a slant shoot combination called, and I'll say, all right, that's a gimme. Can you see it before the ball gets snapped? I'll say that's a gimme. Or I'll be, especially when they're new, I'll be standing behind and I'll be saying pre-snap, pre-snap. That's telling them that's a gimme right there. There's no one on that guy. Take the gimme. So uh, I do want them to recognize patterns, or the I want them to recognize what it looks like when it's a gimme. We're big on the left, right, left. I teach driver's ed too, so it's left, right, left, and so pre-snap wise, we're wanting anytime, and really we like to pick on the walk players, but we're really looking for get just $1,000 throws, the gimme calls. We have a lot of hitch pre-snaps. Well, today our defense was running like a 4-3, a tilted 4-3. So when we were in doubles, there was a slot that was uncovered. Well, our quarterback, I like this kid, but he threw it 3 times in a row. And I just said, keep throwing it, man. If they're going to do it, keep throwing it. Take the gimmies. And the same thing on the run game with the walk players. If the walk players are squeezing down, we got a defense that'll blitz you blind. But if they're bringing down that walk player, well, we know that Larry that's attached to the run game, that's now 2-on-1. So we're taking that. So just taking the easy ones. Uh, I guess in the NFL, where they say that the check down will keep you in the league. If you learn how to hit the check down, it'll keep you in the league. Well, if you learn how to take the gimmies, it'll make you a starting quarterback, and it'll make you pretty famous. You just got to take the gimmies.
Yeah, just get those yards, just start stacking them up. Absolutely. Now that you've had a nice long career, you're established, everyone knows Coach Salas is all about culture and rebuilding programs and finding success in the air raid. Uh, Now that you've had a few decades behind you, how is the dynamic between parents and I would assume head coach is usually where you have to, or you get to be more in tune with parents. How has the dynamic with head coach and parent changed over the years, if it has at all in your experience?
The thing is, I've gotten older. It's gotten easier just because they don't approach me anymore. When I was a young guy, they they'd come at me hard sometimes after a game. But we do a really good job with our preseason parent meeting, and I'm pretty blunt during that meeting. But I think it makes sense. Where like I've always heard guys say, well, we'll talk about anything but playing time. Well, what do you think the kid? What does a parent want to talk about? They want to,
It's the
so
only thing.
I know that's not real, but and I tell them this straight out, and I'm pretty intense on Fridays anyway. That the 24-hour rule is a really good idea. Now I know sometimes they can't do it. They can't do it. They want to do it. They want to wait 24 hours, but they can't. But I remind them, if you're pissed off after that game, there's a good chance I might be pissed off too. So you're going to have to make a decision. Do we really want to be coming at each other when we're both pissed off? And I almost say it that blunt, that if we lose, I'm pissed off. I'm telling you right now. So that's probably not a good time to come at me. 24-hour rule is a really smart rule. And I'm honest with them. I said, you call, if you leave a message on my office phone, you got a 30% chance I'm going to call you back. You leave a message on my cell phone, and I give out my cell phone and all that. I give it out. Everyone's got it. Leave a message on my cell phone, 40% chance. If you text me, I'm going to get back to you. It might not be right away, but I'm going to get back to you. So I'm telling you exactly how to get to me. And I tell them about chain of command too. That if you're jumping me and going above me, you're not going to get a whole lot of respect from me. So come to me, but it's a lot smarter to come to me on Monday. And as I've gotten older and meaner, they believe me. So I don't have the kind of crap that a younger guy probably has.
Yeah, well, that's good. I mean, it's respect, not meaner.
And a lot of that is that parent meeting, though, that just being blunt in the parent meeting saves a lot of trouble. Just being honest, and I'll be funny. We'll laugh in there, but I'm being super blunt on, just that, because they think that they come up through rec league and there's daddy ball going on and all that stuff. I'm like, dude, I get fired if I don't win. I'll tell you who we're going to play. We're going to play the best one who's committed. And I go through the whole, what kind of, do coaches play favorites? Heck yeah. We like the talented ones that are committed and loyal. Those are the ones we like. We like them better than anybody. The second one we like, the ones who aren't talented and they're super committed and super loyal. That's our second favorite. The ones we hate, the talented ones that aren't committed and are not loyal. We can't stand them guys. So you decide. You decide if you're going to be one of my favorites. I don't decide that. You do. So
Do you tell the kids that? I love that profile. You,
oh yeah, I tell the
yeah,
kids
yeah,
that more than the parents, but I'll tell the
respect.
parents that too. That's yeah,
Heck
hell
yeah.
yeah, we play favorites. Yeah, but here's our favorite, here's our second favorite, and here's the one we can't stand. So I'll tell them this. So you might be sitting in a stand knowing for a fact that your kid is more talented than that kid that's playing. But is he committed and is he loyal? Because if he's not, he ain't going to be on the field. Talent will get you. Talent alone will get you fired. Talent alone, that's not worth a crap. I can't stand a talented, uncommitted, unloyal kid. Can't stand him. He's my least favorite kid on the team. So
Yeah, I
now you know.
freaking love that, coach. That's amazing. All right.
And that might be, you might have to be old to be able to say that. I don't know, but I've been being pretty dang blunt for a long time, and it worked because now there's a respect for, don't beat around the bush. Say what you mean what you say. And that's maybe we get a little bit of that. And they still now, and I got a principal who will take phone calls, and so they still call him. They won't call me, but they'll call him. And then then he filters out what he wants to talk to me about. But he knows. I tell him the same thing. We're gonna play. We're gonna play the ones that we're gonna win with, and you're not gonna win with talented, uncommitted kids.
Well, that's a good segue into my next question. Very similar question, but about administration at these schools. How is your dynamic with the administration? I mean, I'm thinking more athletic director, but like you said, the principals are right there with the ADs usually. So how has that changed over the years? Any different? Harder? Easier?
I don't think harder. The administrations have changed. It used to be retired football coaches, and that's not anymore.
Yeah.
Uh, but I've been very, very lucky that most of my career I've had a good principal who who liked me, and we got along great. Uh, I've had just a few situations where it wasn't a good principal, and a few situations where it wasn't a good AD, and I mean you're toast. I mean you can't survive a bad administration or a bad AD. You can't survive.
Mm.
You gotta move, and it's as simple as that. I'm lucky. I've got a principal now that I consider a good friend of mine, and I got an AD who's probably one of the best ADs I've ever been around.
Wow.
So, and I'm the assistant AD. So, uh, I'm in I'm a good situation there. But I've had it where I had a bad AD, and it was murder. It made everything harder. Everything, you put in, heck, for a bad AD, you put in 5 times the work for a bad print. And I don't think sometimes you have a principal who's just not an athletic guy, and if they'll leave you alone, it's okay.
Mm-hmm.
It's hard to be a bad principal, but you want a principal who's very supportive of athletics, which is what I have now. But I've had guys who were, they weren't athletic people, but they left you alone and let you do your thing, and that wasn't the worst thing in the world. It's hard to get a bad principal, but so anyway, so yeah, it can get you if you got a bad principal, bad AD combination. You got to go somewhere else because it ain't gonna work.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. And I'm just at the freaking. I feel like I'm at ground zero for the cancel culture. So I'm feeling there's a lot of coaches out here quitting and moving to the South and the Midwest to just coach ball the way they know how to coach it. And that's not just football. I'm talking baseball and basketball too. Anyway.
I think baseball's harder, to be honest with you, because uh, there's one, and I've always done, and I'll do this in our first introductory meeting because I am pretty brutal. I pretty am blunt, but I, honest to God, I think a baseball coach, those parents think they know more than that baseball.
Yes.
They honest to God, and it's because they'll say, "Well, I coached some boys when they were 9-year-old all stars. I know what they can do." Yeah, well, yeah, no, you don't
Yeah.
you don't know what they can do, but we don't get that in football as much. And in North Carolina now, you'll get it in basketball because this is a basketball state now. Them cats, they can play some basketball. So you'll get that where, heck, a father might have played Division I basketball. Well, what you gonna do about that? He thinks he knows more than you. So you get that a little bit in basketball. You get a lot in baseball, but in football you just don't get that. And I'll do my when I do my first parent meeting, like when I get hired at a place, I'll do the whole spiel, lay out the culture, tell them what we're doing, and then I always finish with, now I know in this room there's that one guy that stands in the stands, and he calls he knows it more than the coach does. Who's that guy?
Oh, love it, coach.
And they'll always point to him. They'll always give him up. They'll always point to him. When I came to Hopton, I said it, and they all pointed to the guy. He was standing right next. He was sitting right next to me, and I said, "Oh, okay, that's good. That's good." I said, "Hey, what's your best fire zone versus 3x1?" And he said, and I said, "Just remember now, when you start hollering stuff from them stands, I might turn around and ask you a question, because there's no one in this room that knows more football than me. You can get 5 or 6 of you together, and you don't know more than I do. Because this is what I do for a living.
Period.
And I'm not going to come to your job and tell you how to drive a UPS truck. I'm not going to do that because you know more about that than I do. But this is my profession. Talking about 300, what's your profession? This is my profession. This is what I do for a living. This is how I feed my kids. And there's no one in here that knows. You might have an opinion, but it's just your opinion. It's not fact.
I love
And
I love it. And yeah,
I always feel like freaking be blunt at the beginning, and you can be nice later.
absolutely. But no, it's funny because every parent has seen this dude for the last 7 years of youth sports, baseball, basketball, all in the same teams, all in the same cities, always the same people. That's so funny, Coach, that you called that out. So you are the culture king. We've said that. Do you? I don't know if you have a label for your type of coach. I read that Tony Dungy book. Servant leader, I think it was called, and people have different philosophies that they kind of live by as a coach. Do you attach yourself to any specific one, or
We've started using that term servant leadership with our seniors. That we're really teaching our seniors to be servant leaders. That it's about doing the dirty work for the team. So our seniors get the water before practice. They clean the buses after the games. They eat last the pregame meals. They really are the servant of the team. We want them understanding that's their job. If they love the team, they do the dirty work, and without someone willing to do the dirty work, you don't have a team. Mine, mine's always just been that concept of, I know football saved me. I know it changed. That it is not just a game. It changed me. It saved me. It changed my whole world. And to me, it's just about putting tools in the kids that they're actually going to use the rest of their life. We go through we got our 5 core principles, and I'll do this in a parent meeting. I'll do this with kids at different times. Attitude, leadership, work ethic, toughness, and family. All right, those 5 things they build. If you got a player that's got those 5 things, he's got a great attitude. He's a great leader. He's tremendous work ethic. Comes late, comes early, leaves late. He's got toughness, mental, physical, emotional toughness. He's a tough SOB. And then he's loyal. He bleeds, for us, black and gold. He's loyal. He believes in the team. He believes in his teammate. He's got his teammates back. You got a good football player. If they got those 5 things, they're a good football player. Now, we didn't say how tall he was. We didn't say how big he was. We didn't say how fast he ran. But we know those 5. If he's got those 5 things, he's going to be a good football player. Well, then if he's got those 5 things, he's going to be a good man. He's going to be a good husband. He's going to be a good son. He's going to be a good brother. He's going to be a good co-worker. He's going to be a good boss. Those 5 things make a man. And that's really how, when we started the whole thing, one day I just had, because probably what you were talking about that's going out in California, I felt, I said, man, I spend more time with these kids than I spend with my own kids, So what kind of kid do I want to coach? That's what it came down to, is what kind of kid do I want to coach? And those were the ingredients of the kids that I want to be around, because I'm 55. I love hanging out with the guys. I love being around coaches, and I love being around players. I enjoy it, but I don't want to be around what is it? I don't want to be around a douchebag. I want to be around good people, and those are the things that build good people. And if they got those 5 things, they're good players. And if they got those things, they're good men. And when they graduate, I want them to have those things in them. I want them to know that they got the ingredients to do anything they want to do, and they got the ability to do anything they want to do because they got it in them, and that's important. I want them to leave our program knowing that they got it in them, that they're capable of doing anything they want to do, any goal they want to set, they can achieve it because they got it in them.
I love it, Coach. I love it, and that's just reinforcing, giving them more confidence. It doesn't have to be on the football field. If you got those 5 things, like you said, it should instill confidence in them to just hear that they have those things, just in general in their life. Nothing, not even anything to do with football, honestly. So I love that, Coach. Okay, getting your players recruited. Is that your job as a high school head coach on the varsity level, or is that something that it just comes if it comes?
It's our job to give them the information. Obviously, those college coaches want a certain skill level, and they want a certain they're looking for a certain body type, but it's our job to make sure they know that you got to have the grades and you got to have the test scores, which I don't know, they might be getting rid of test scores. And the biggest one, they got to know about the 1 day camps, that you got to go to the 1 day camps. You got to get in front of those coaches. It's our job to make sure we go to at least one of those big 7-on-7s at colleges so they get eyes on them. It's our job to make sure they understand that when a coach comes in, this is how you greet them, and this is what you say, and this is you don't big dog a Division II coach because that might be your only offer.
Right.
You know it's our job to coach them up on how the game is played. It I can't force them. I'm sure you've done the same deal where they passed on a kid, and I know they screwed up. That kid was a winner, and he would make any program better, and they blew it. And then I've had them take guys. I was like, "Are you sure? You sure you want to take that guy?" No, but they're looking at a body
Right.
type and they're looking at potential. So they don't listen to me, but it's my job to prepare the kid and put them in the right positions so that if they're interested, they have a chance. It's our job to make sure they're not screwing it up on social media. That's all that stuff's our job. And but I can't force them to take somebody, even though I wanted to before. I wanted to grab them and say, this kid right here will make you better, but they don't listen
No,
sometimes.
they've got directives: 6'3", 215, and runs a 4.6. And don't talk to me if they don't do those things.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and they go by that profile. A lot of times they're going by the profile. That's all they care about. Sometimes they care about production and they care about character and they care about the other stuff, and that's. But I can't force them to do it. But I got to get my kid
Yeah,
ready to
just
do
put
it.
them in the right situation and be available if it does happen. I love it. All right.
And I mean, we've loaded them in the car and taken them to the 1 day camps ourselves before. I mean, we've done all that,
All right.
but
Almost done
I can't
here.
make them take them.
Talk to me about, if you're okay, uh, fatherhood, husbandhood. We all know coaches, they probably, if you averaged out the actual hours you spent putting together game plans, even at home or at school, and you work as many hours as almost any profession out there, which takes a toll naturally on your family and the time you get to spend with your kids during certain times of the year, or a big part of the year, right? So I just want to give you a chance. I don't know if you want to talk about that process or how that was with you, with maybe your wife. Was it hard kind of early on with you out of the house a lot, or were you able to integrate it pretty seamlessly?
I got very lucky. I married the best coach's wife in the world, and I don't know that she. I guess probably when we got married, I was a GA at Valdosta State, and we were working those crazy hours back then. So maybe that early training, the coaches on that staff were the coaches' wives were very close on that staff, so they bonded together and they did stuff together. But maybe that early training helped her for the rest of my career because I never put in those kind of hours again. Those are crazy hours that we were doing back then. But I got I told someone this the other day. You don't get married, you're just picking a lottery ticket. You don't know. It takes 2 or 3 years before you know whether you got a winning ticket or not. And I got a winning ticket, so I got very lucky on that with the kids. And I had two girls, but I always included them on every. And I tell all my coaches, and I tell every coach out there, include your kids in the program. Uh, you lose a lot of coaches when they have kids. They for what the wife puts pressure on them, or they put pressure on themselves, and you lose them. But you're losing the opportunity of lifetime. That those memories that your kids gain being around that program, that's it's priceless, and not everyone gets the opportunity to do that. And even though I had two girls, man, they were at every game. They filmed when they were in high school and middle school. They filmed games for us. We've got there's a clip that comes on YouTube every year at the anniversary of this game where we were in the semifinals and we won the semifinals in like triple overtime to go to the state championship game. And that is my daughter filming, and you can hear her screaming when we scored. We made a 2 point, and then I think we blocked their extra point, and then we got the 2 point to win the game. And you can hear my daughter, my oldest daughter, screaming because she's on the camera, and those are memories. You know, what's that worth? What's that worth that they were a part of that? What's that worth when they get to come on the field and you're holding them while you're talking to your team? What's it worth when they're out at practice? What's it worth when they get to drive the gator around on Saturday while you're mowing the grass? What's that worth? So include your kids in it, and I'm telling you, you're going to give them something priceless, something they're going to remember the rest of it. Even I don't know how big FCA is out in California, but the opportunities that FCA is given to, they've sent me and my wife to marriage. I want to say camps, but
It's like retreats or
I
something.
don't know, like weekends, that kind of thing for free. They've sent my family to Black Mountain, the whole family and we've spent I think a whole week up there a couple times for free. Those opportunities, just include them. Normal people don't get the opportunity to see and do and experience what your kids are going to get to see, do, and experience. And it's just priceless. So when I hate to see when a guy quits coaching because he has kids, because he's missing the best part of it. The best part is when your kids are involved. Especially, can you imagine sons that get to be the ball boys from the time they're 7 all the way up to now they're the starting quarterback? Come on, that's there's no price you can put on that. That's $1 million worth of experience, and that's something you and your kid are going to have forever. No one's going to take that. That's forever. So I think it's the best thing in the world. And again, and I have 2 girls, and I still say I wouldn't take it for anything. Those experiences, those memories.
The best part of it, coach, is your daughters got to know you in a way that they wouldn't have got to know you. I mean, we talk about learning through osmosis for high school kids that you're kind of just hanging around. What you're describing, that long 2 decades worth of just being around each other, not just like at home when you're telling them to do homework or at home when you're telling them to eat their vegetables, right? Like this is real time where they get to not have to talk to you, but see you for the man that you are, right? And that type of stuff that takes father daughter, father son relationships to a new level, because now all of a sudden, you're seeing each other for more than just that one role that we've all kind of learned.
And I'm kind of a dork, so we were always like I was always big on movie clips before the game, just short little movie clips, and creating a theme through the whole week. And I would always make sure they probably wouldn't be in there pregame to see it, but Saturday they were going to see it, and I was going to explain it to them exactly like I explained it to the team, because I wanted those five core principles. They got to be in my girls too, and toughness. Since our girls were old enough to walk, they knew that Salas's are tough. That's what we are. We're tough, and nothing can come at us that we can't handle. And that was a big deal. We were 2 pretty little girls, cheerleader and dancers, but they knew that Salas's are tough, and there's nothing tougher than a Salas, and there's nothing a Salas can't handle. And isn't that something you want? Every kid needs to know that their last name means something, and when they see that last name, yeah. So I mean, it's just priceless. And I hate it. It happened to me. It happened this year. We got a guy who had his second child, and he's not coaching this year, and I hate it. I hate it for him. I hate that his kids are going to miss that, and I try to tell them, but they until they know, they don't know. So anyway, I just it's just private, but include your kids, because there's nothing like it. It's the greatest game in the world, and there's nothing like it. All right, I saw Urban Meyer 3 years ago. He spoke at the UNC clinic, and he told this story. and it was like a religious experience watching him. And he told a story about he was out of coaching for a year, and he was coaching his son's middle school team, and his son was a safety, so he was the safeties coach. And he said they get into the first game, and his little son's back there, and he backpedals, and the stud running back busts through the line. And kid comes up, everything breaks down, perfect, gets trucked, runs over him, helmet's twisted sideways, he's laying down, and he said, and he's standing on the sideline, and he's looking at his kid, and he knows his kid wants someone to run out there and save him. He knows he wants the trainer to come get him. His helmet's twisted, he's got snot running out of his nose, he's crying, and Urban's standing on the sideline, and he said, the only thing I said is, get your ass up. Get your ass up. No one's coming to save you. Because that's what football is, and that's what life is. That life is going to knock you down. It's going to embarrass you. It's going to knock snot bubbles out of your nose. You're going to be crying. You're going to want someone to run out there and save you. But you can't wait for someone to come save you. Get your ass up and get back in the fight. That's why football is so important. No one's coming to save you, buddy. Get your tail up and get back in the fight. You got what it takes. Your tail is tough. You put the work in. Have a great attitude. Have loyalty to your family and to your team. Get your tail up and get back in the fight. And that's why it's the most important game in the world.
Absolutely. There's fewer and fewer opportunities to learn that lesson in our life. And like it might be the only one left where you actually physically, like not mentally get knocked down, but physically have to pick yourself back up and go do it again. And that mental hurdle is the difference between I don't know, just being okay with a average life to going after a great life, right? Like it's
When I tell that story at the banquet, I always start and I say, this is I challenge them. I even did that at the awards banquet this year with multiple sports in there. I said, this is why, moms, this is why your kid needs to play football, because and all the dads in here who played, you're going to understand exactly what I mean. Because in football, there's going to come a time when you get ear holed. And I got to explain, that means someone hits you and you didn't see him coming. And they're going to knock you, they're going to knock you flat on your tail. And then I go through that whole urban, that you're going to be crying. The wind's going to be knocked out of you. When you can't get the end, and and you're going to want someone to save you. But that's why football is the most important game there is. Because at that moment, you got to decide that you're going to get yourself up. Because in life, and think about it, in life, you're going to get earholed. There's going to be a divorce. There's going to be someone's going to get laid off. There's going to be a bad report from a doctor. You're going to get earholed in life. And you got to know that you got what it takes to get back up and get in a fight. Or you're going to lay there and you're going to hope someone's going to come save you. That's what life is. And that's why every mom in here, you got to have your kid play football, because it's the only sport that teaches you that when you get earholed, it ain't the end of the game.
biggest challenge you've had to overcome in your life. It could be football related. It could be not football related, but a big challenge that you had in your life and how you overcame it.
I think all guys probably have the same two, don't they? It's probably the same three. It's when you lose your mom, that's going to happen. Everyone's going to lose their mom at some point, and that's a tough one for men. You're going to get your heart broken at some point, and you're gonna have to figure out, you got to get your tail up and get back in the fight. And then you're going to get fired at some point. I've been fired 3 times, and all 3 times, man, it takes the wind out of you and it makes you question yourself. And you got to roll your shoulders and bite your teeth and look in the mirror and know that you got what it takes. And it helps if you know, man, they just messed up. When they fired you, they messed up, man, and now you got to go prove it. So those 3 things, I think, are 3 things that all men have to face, and I've faced all 3 of them. And I can honestly say, and I've told coaches this before, I'll always call it when a guy gets fired. I'll call him and I remind them, number one, you better remember who you are and that that they messed up. But you know, everyone's got to face those three things, and and every time it makes you better. I guess that's what I was going to say about a coach. When a coach gets fired, I tell them, hey, if you ain't been fired, I highly recommend it because it makes you better. I've never been fired where I didn't come back and think I was twice as good the next year. Never, it's never happened. I tell guys that if you ain't ever been fired, I highly recommend it because it makes you reevaluate everything you do. It makes you renew everything that you do and refine everything that you do and come back better. You got to get rid of the stuff that don't work, and you got to double down on stuff that does work, and you got to simplify and you got to refine. It makes you better. I've never been fired when I didn't think I was twice as good the next year, and I always knew for a fact, man, they messed up. Boy, they screwed up right there, and then now you got to go prove it.
That's great, Coach. And that, I can't imagine how that could be a good feeling when that happens. But what you're saying, right, is there's opportunity there. So I love that. You just have the right.
It don't feel good when it happens, but you got to know. You got to know that you're going to be twice as good because of it.
I love it. I love it. Okay, last one, Coach. You got billboard space. So you can't be too long-winded with this. If I had to put something on a billboard, a message, one word, a phrase from you to a coach for one singular piece of advice, and you gotta think about it because you got a lot of advice for coaches. I know you do, Coach. But one best billboard type of piece of advice for a coach in his journey, what would that be?
Yeah, well, I heard someone ask Don Shula this, and his advice was rent. So that was always a good one. But I like, and this is not just for coaches. I think
That's
this is
funny.
for everybody.
Oh my God.
Is Randy Jackson's? We use it as our motto, and it's TPW. Tough people win. And I sell that hard to our kids that that's how life works. The tougher you are, the easier life is going to be, and the softer you are, the harder life is going to be because you just increase. When you got the guy who always complains, always blames someone else, always thinks someone's against them, always when you come up with all those excuses, you just make life harder. You know, uh, I heard someone talking about going back to getting fired. I heard someone say when you get fired, you have to uh, get rid of the anger. You got to get rid of the guilt, and you gotta get focused on how am I going to get better. That bottom line, no matter how it went down, you got to get better. And to me, that's toughness. Because the only alternative is to blame someone else, to point fingers at other people, to make excuses, to make it someone else's fault. Now you guarantee if you do those four things, you cannot get better. You will not get better from it. So which one are you going to do? You're fired either way. You're going to get better, or you're going to point fingers and not get better. So TPW, tough people win. To me, that is the essence of everything. That no matter what happens, you got it in you. And no matter what happens, you're going to be better because of it. And I use this one in Sunday school sometimes that I think it was Gallup did a poll, and their first question was, "What's the worst thing that's ever happened in your life?" I think you asked that question, didn't you? What's the worst thing that's ever happened in your life? And then their second question was, "What's the best thing that's ever happened in your life?" And it was something like 47% of the people, it was the same thing. It was the same thing. That right now it feels like it's the worst thing that's ever happened to you. 10 years from now, you're going to say, "Oh my God, thank God that happened to me because it changed everything." And that tough people win. If you have some toughness to you, and that's physical, mental, emotional, if you have some toughness to you, everything is to help you. Because of this, something good will happen. That's how life is.
And it's a choice, right, Coach? Like you can choose to be tough and face this situation, or you can choose to just sit there and let things happen to you.
Yeah.
That's
And you can choose to eat it, or you can choose to blame someone else.
right,
But only one of those is going to make you better.
right.
And the second one won't make you any better.
Holy cow. That's great wisdom to live by and great wisdom to kind of finish up on. So Coach, thank you so much for spending the time again. I know you've been on my channel multiple times and we can't appreciate you enough. All your wisdom that you spread on your channels obviously does nothing but help pass the buck forward. So remind everyone how they can get in touch or follow you. I know you got your YouTube, Twitter. What's the best way to do it?
It's easier on Twitter. It's Coach Joe Salas. That's a good way to DM me if you want to get up with me. But the YouTube channel, Coach Joe Salas, is that's kind of my baby. And then we got the podcast, Championship Culture, where we're just talking to coaches about how they build their culture on their team, which is kind of that's kind of my hot button. So those three things are good ones. And I got a shameless plug. I'm gonna do it, George. I'm gonna do a shameless plug. The Coach Tube. What did I call it? High school air raid.
Oh,
I can't remember what I
your
call that
bundle,
thing,
right?
but yeah, high school air raid bundle is it's $75, and I think it's really good. It's helped a lot of people. I've gotten a lot of feedback from it. So there's my shameless plug.
No, for sure. And I will make sure all those things you just listed are in the show notes for anybody that's listening to this. So go ahead and click into there, and I will attest to all those things. If you don't know my story and somehow you're listening to this, Joe Salas has been a huge reason why I even delved into air raid and then was able to find success at my younger level. So the bundle, well worth the $75. His YouTube channel is where I get all my practice plans and install plans, and I test out new plays and see what he's doing and why aren't I doing that, or why am I doing that? I stole the GT counter quick screen combination. That's a huge part of my offense now, and it's all like I could probably say that about four things in my offense. So thank you for putting all that out. The majority of it is free, so spending a little bit of money on Coach Tube is well worth the resources that Coach puts out. So thanks again, Coach. Really wishing you the best of luck. We're about a month away from true camp starting, so I'm excited to kind of see what you guys do this year, and can't say thank you enough. So again, really appreciate everything that you do, Coach, and thanks for being with us one more time.
I appreciate it, buddy. I always enjoy it.
All right, bud. We'll talk soon. Huh?
Thanks again for tuning in to the Quarterback Code. If you got value from this episode, please take a moment to like and let us know in the comments below. It helps us grow and bring you even more top-tier coaching content. Stay connected with us on Instagram, Twitter, and right here on YouTube. And be sure to join our highly active Coaches Community Facebook group, where we break down strategies, share insight, and support each other year-round. And most importantly, share this episode with other coaches who can benefit from it, because at the end of the day, without quarterback execution, you really don't have a chance.